The alarm rang at 6 a.m., sharp and unforgiving, slicing through the thin walls of the small apartment. Daniel reached out blindly to silence it before it woke Lily. He lay still for a moment, staring at the cracked ceiling, letting the weight of the day settle on his chest. Today was the interview, the one he'd been waiting for since his layoff 8 months ago. The one that could finally pull them out of survival mode. From the next room came the soft cough he knew too well. Lily's. He was up instantly. She was sitting on the edge of her bed when he entered, her legs too thin for the oversized pajamas she'd outgrown but they couldn't afford to replace yet. Her hair stuck out in odd directions, and she looked up at him with sleepy eyes that tried to be brave even when her body wasn't. "Morning, Bug," he said softly, kneeling to her level. "You going to the suit place today?" she asked. She meant the interview, but she loved pretending it was something fancy. He smiled. "Yeah, big building, lots of glass. I'll be back before you finish homework." She nodded, then frowned. "You nervous?" "A little," he admitted. "But mostly excited." That wasn't the whole truth, but Lily didn't need the whole truth. She needed stability, not fear. After breakfast, toast split carefully so there'd be enough, he walked her to school. She squeezed his hand harder than usual before running inside, turning once to wave with both arms like she always did. Daniel waited until the doors closed before turning away. The bus ride downtown felt longer than usual. He adjusted the borrowed tie around his neck, checking his reflection in the scratched window. The suit wasn't new, but it was clean. He'd practiced his answers late into the night, whispering them so Lily wouldn't hear. He was ready. He had to be. 2 blocks from the office tower, it happened. A woman stumbled out from between parked cars and collapsed onto the sidewalk just a few steps ahead of him. People swerved around her without slowing, eyes fixed forward, pretending not to notice. Daniel froze for half a second, long enough for his phone to buzz with a reminder, interview in 22 minutes. Then he ran to her. She was conscious but pale, her breathing shallow. One hand clutched her side, the other reached out blindly as if the ground itself might disappear. Daniel dropped to his knees. Hey, I've got you," he said. "Can you hear me?" She nodded weakly. "Dizzy. Can't stand." He looked around. "Someone call an ambulance." A man shook his head and kept walking. A woman glanced, hesitated, then followed him away. Daniel pulled out his phone himself, already kneeling, already late. The dispatcher asked questions. Daniel answered calmly, his voice steady even as his eyes kept flicking toward the glass building rising just down the street. He gave his name, location, details. When he hung up, the woman looked at him, her eyes sharper now despite the pain. "You don't have to stay," she said. "I'll be fine." He shook his head. "Ambulance is on the way." She tried to smile. "You're dressed like you're going somewhere important." He exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I am." A wave of pain crossed her face. "I'm sorry." "It's okay," he said, though it didn't feel okay. Not at all. Minutes stretched. He loosened his jacket and placed it around her shoulders when she started shivering. He talked to her about nothing. About the weather, about how his daughter thought pigeons were secretly in charge of the city. She laughed once, then winced. The sirens finally came. Paramedics lifted her onto a stretcher. One of them turned to Daniel. "You family?" "No, friend." He shook his head. "Just there." The paramedic nodded, already wheeling her away. "You did the right thing." Daniel watched the ambulance disappear into traffic. His phone buzzed again. Missed call. Voicemail. He didn't need to listen to know what it said. The interview was over before he'd even arrived. He stood there for a long moment, the city rushing around him, and then turned back toward the bus stop. His shoulders felt heavier, his steps slower. He told himself he'd done the right thing. He told himself that over and over, like a mantra, until it almost sounded true. That evening, Lily sat at the kitchen table coloring with a broken blue crayon. She looked up when he came in. "How'd it go?" she asked. Daniel hesitated for half a second. Then he smiled. "Didn't get it," he said gently. Her face fell. "Because of me?" "No," he said quickly, kneeling beside her chair. "Never because of you. Just timing." She studied his face, then wrapped her arms around his neck. "It's okay, Daddy. We'll be okay." He hugged her back a little tighter than usual, breathing in the scent of crayons and soap, wishing he believed it as easily as she did. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Daniel sat at the small table with a stack of bills and his head in his hands. He didn't regret helping the woman. Not really, but regret had a way of sneaking in anyway, whispering what-ifs in the quiet. A knock at the door startled him. He checked the time, almost 10. No one ever knocked that late. When he opened the door, a woman stood in the hallway, posture straight despite a faint bruise on her arm. She looked familiar in a way that made his chest tighten. "I hope I have the right place," she said. Daniel stared. "You're the woman from this morning." She nodded. "I am, and I owe you an apology. And a thank you." Before he could respond, she added softly, "May I come in?" Daniel stepped aside, still confused, still unaware that his life had just taken a turn he never could have planned. Daniel blinked, stunned, as the woman stepped into the small apartment, her heels clicking softly on the worn linoleum. The dim light from the kitchen flickered across her face, and for a moment, he couldn't place her outside of the panic and rain-soaked chaos of that morning. She looked calm, composed, every inch the professional he had imagined the interviewers in the glass tower would be, but there was an unmistakable warmth behind her eyes. "Sit down," he said automatically, motioning to the chair opposite the kitchen table. She obeyed, folding her hands neatly in her lap. Daniel poured her a cup of tea, his hands slightly trembling, and slid it across to her. She accepted it with a small smile, blowing on the steaming surface before taking a sip. "I want to thank you again for what you did," she said, her voice steady. "Most people just pass by. You didn't." Daniel shrugged, scratching the back of his neck. I didn't have a choice, really. Someone needed help." He avoided her eyes, suddenly self-conscious about the mess of the apartment, the bills stacked on the counter, and the crayon marks on the table. "But you should know, I missed something important this morning because of it. My big interview." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze sharp but kind. "And yet, here you are. You made a choice. That says more about you than any interview ever could." She paused, then reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek leather folder. "Daniel, I'm going to be blunt. I'm the CEO of the company where you were supposed to have your interview." Daniel felt his stomach drop. You're the CEO?" "Yes," she said, smiling faintly. "And I've been watching you. Not in a creepy way, I promise, but today showed me the kind of person you are. Someone who does the right thing even when it's inconvenient, even when there's no immediate reward. That's rare." Daniel swallowed hard, unsure if he was hearing correctly. "So, you're offering me the job?" She nodded. "Not just offering you the job. I want you on my team. And more than that, I want to make sure your daughter and you are taken care of. You put someone else's life ahead of your own career today. That says everything I need to know about your character." His mind raced. The missed interview, the weeks of uncertainty, the struggle to provide for Lily, they all suddenly seemed distant, overshadowed by the weight of her words. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," she replied softly. "Or at least, let's start there. Come in tomorrow, and we'll get things rolling." Daniel's chest tightened, but the knot of fear and exhaustion began to unravel. He felt a spark of hope he hadn't allowed himself in months. "Yes," he said finally, a small smile spreading across his face. I'd like that." She returned the smile, and for a moment, the small apartment felt brighter than it had in months. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving a fresh, clean scent in the air. Daniel realized that sometimes, doing the right thing, not worrying about the consequences, not counting the cost, was exactly what changed everything. Before leaving, she glanced at a crayon-smeared table and laughed softly. "Your daughter seems amazing. She's my world," Daniel said. "And she'll be thrilled when she hears this." "I'm sure she will be," the CEO replied, standing. "And Daniel, thank you, truly. You made a difference today. Not just for me, but for her too." As she walked toward the door, Daniel felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The world was unpredictable, messy, and sometimes punishing, but moments like this reminded him that courage and kindness never went unnoticed. He poured himself another cup of tea and went to check on Lily, realizing that life had a way of rewarding those who chose to do right, even when it meant stepping off the path they thought they had to follow. The next morning, Daniel stepped into the towering office building, this time not as a nervous applicant, but as a valued employee of the company he had dreamed of joining. And as he settled into his new role, he understood something profound. Saving a stranger had not only changed her life but had rewritten his own. The city felt less harsh, the future less uncertain, and for the first time in months, he could breathe without the weight of fear pressing on his chest. Lily's laughter echoed in his memory as he reviewed his first day's schedule, and he knew that, finally, their world had shifted. And it all began with a single choice: to stop, to help, and to put humanity above ambition.